welcome back to the Purlsbeforethyme knitting podcast. I'm Elise. I hope you're all doing really well. And today I'm going to be doing another designer deep dive, which is a series I started a little while ago and then I haven't done one in probably about a year now. So yeah, I have 3 out. So if you want to go have a look at those, I have one on Nordlig, and all the things I've made by her, and then my favorite things knitwear, and I've got a one on petite knit as well. So if you haven't seen those, you can go have a look at those later. But the one I want to talk about today, the designer I want to talk about today, is Fiber Tales. So I put a little poll out on my Instagram about a month ago, asking what is the minimum number of patterns you should have made by a designer to get a really good idea for what the designer is like. And the kind of most popular number was 3. So I'm taking that as a baseline. You might disagree with that. You might think that 3 is not enough to really get to grips with the designer style, or you might think that 3 is more than enough. So yeah, we'll see. So Fiber Tales. I have made 4 things by Fiber Tales, so let's hope that that's enough to get a good overview. But I do have a pretty good sort of recognition of her patterns. So I own quite a lot of the ones beyond the ones that I've actually knit. I've tested for her quite a lot, which means that I've got patterns as a reward for testing, and I haven't actually made any of those yet. I've only really made the ones I'm going to show today, and then one other which I actually just bought on my own. But anyway, a little bit of background. So Fiber Tales is the sort of knitwear brand name of a Danish designer called Lærke. She is a photographer and a yarn or knitwear designer. And she also has a YouTube channel, so go check that out. It's really nice. She shows really beautiful, calm footage of her life in Denmark. And yeah, she makes really beautiful clothes. And the one I'm wearing is one of her designs I made last year. I'll talk all about the things I've made in a minute. And as well as being a photographer and knitwear designer, I think her parents own some sheep, so a couple of times a year she will pick up yarn from a mill, which is all the yarn spun from her parents' sheep farm, and it comes in normally a grey and a charcoal, and they're both really beautiful undyed colours. And yeah, she sells that as well, which I've often been very tempted to buy. I'm currently on a no buy, and she released some recently that was very tempting. But I'm going to wait until I've knitted more of my stash before I indulge in any more yarn. But yeah, her design style is very much where she incorporates elements of nature, and she has a lot of fun stitch patterns which will look like an ode to nature, and I really like that sort of down to earth theme that she has going. So, and she also is very creative with construction and technique, and I don't think any of the things I've made by her could be described as boring. There's always a sort of little element that's very engaging. And yeah, I've kind of enjoyed everything I've made by her, and I've learned something in every pattern, which I really enjoy. I like having a pattern where I learn something new. So I'm going to talk about everything that I've made. And so I have 3 of the things with me, and then one of them I've given as a gift, but I will put a photograph somewhere. And I'll talk about that one first, because that's the first thing I made by her. And that is the Humlebi Shawl. And I made that maybe 3 years ago. And it's a really lovely shawl because you cast on the long edge, and then you just decrease every row, so it gets faster and faster and faster. And it doesn't really, but it feels like you're just kind of getting to the end, which I find really motivating. So I finished that in 3 days. And the other part of that make that was really fun was I made it with yarn that I dyed myself with leftover coffee grounds. So I just had this white yarn that wasn't very expensive. I think it was DK weight, and I knew I wanted to dye it. And I didn't mordant it or anything. I just took the coffee grounds, I made the mistake of not putting any kind of filters or anything with it. I just threw all the coffee in a pot and threw all the yarn in, and I heated it up, and yeah, I ended up with coffee grounds all in this yarn, but it gradually sort of, as the yarn was dry and as I was working with it, it would just sort of fall out, so it wasn't too much of a problem. But it ended up being this really beautiful, like sort of warm beige color, like a bit light brown, like tan, which I thought was very nice. And yeah, so the edge in the pattern is supposed to have a sort of like picot edging, and I opted against that because I didn't really like it that much. I didn't think it suited my style, but you don't have to do that. That was just optional. So I just did a straight edge, and then what's nice is there's this like little edge motif on the shawl with these stitches that it's a couple of bubble stitches and then some like lengthened stitches, and together they form a little B shape, which is so cute. So yeah, you just have these like little line of bees along the edges of the shawl, and then there's a few little like flower like lace patterns around. So it's a really charming make. So the edge is super engaging because you have the bee motif and the flower motif, and then on the inside it's just garter stitch, which is just nice and easy and fun. And yeah, I would highly recommend making that. Sorry, I've let my cat outside and he's running around being distracting. So if I let him outside, he can't disturb me, and what does he do? He just, yeah, it's a bit silly, sorry. Anyway, so that's the Humlebi shawl. If you're looking for a kind of like, maybe like one level above beginner, or like if you're a very ambitious beginner, then I would recommend that pattern because it's really, really nice, and it's a shawl, so you can make it in all sorts of weights. And in the end, the person I gave it to, I know, really likes it and wears it very often, and it is well loved. So yeah, the Humlebi shawl. So then the next pattern I've made by Lerche, and all the rest of the patterns were test knits. This one was, I think, early 2022. So, you know, time goes by so fast. But anyway, these are this pair of socks. They are called, oh my goodness, what is the name of these socks? I'll write it on the thing. I was going to say Gros socks, but Gros is another one of her patterns that isn't this one. Oh, they're called Vore socks, and Vore means spring. So they're these really nice, sweet socks. I don't have many pairs of socks in my knitting repertoire, but these were really fun to knit. So they have a really beautiful sort of heel stitch, and then they're just mainly stockinette, and I think they were worked top down, and then at the end you embroider on all these little flowers. So I think per sock it was something like 30 flowers, so I was doing like 60 flowers, and I think I made one in a week and then the other one the next week. So quite small needles, I think 2.5, but a really fun and engaging knit, and these are a little bit oversized on me. So I used to try and wear them with boots and such, but the thing with them is also that I didn't use superwash yarn. I used just normal knitting for olive merino. So you can see when they wore, they get a little bit like felty, and I'm worried about them breaking. So I kind of just use them as sort of indoor slipper socks now, which I like. If I'm planning on maybe making a pair of more like durable boot socks, and I know that she does have a pattern for, I think they're called boot socks, so that might be on my list to do at some point. So these are just really charming and sweet, and yeah, this is the first time I'd embroidered these kind of flowers on knits, and then it's also the first time I used this type of slipped heel stitch on a sock, so that's something new I did on this pattern. So then I didn't make anything by her between when I did this, which was in 2022, until last year, which is 2024. And then in the spring, I applied for a test knit for this top, which I had yarn in stash that just happened to match this very well. So I was very lucky that I could get on this test knit, and I had a great excuse to use this yarn. But it's this beautiful t-shirt here, I hope you can see. It's called the Duer tee, which means dove in Danish but also Norwegian. And this, it didn't take too long to make, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And it's the kind of construction where, let me think, do I remember how I made it? Was it bottom up? I think it might have been a bottom up top. I can't remember. It's funny how you make things and you're like, how did I make this? Yeah, I'm fairly sure it's bottom up, and then you split the front and the back, then you divide the front into 2, and then you make the V-neck, and then you do a graft on the shoulders. So I'm fairly sure that's how this is made. And then the fact that it's a bottom-up cast on means that if you get bored of doing stockinette, you can actually do the hem. And the hem is really lovely because it is a crocheted hem. So you pick up stitches all along the cast on edge, and then there's this really, like, I hadn't done crochet in a long time when I did this pattern, and it was really nice to get back into doing some crochet and just getting into the rhythm. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think it's a really beautiful feminine detail. And the other thing about this top that's very nice is the sleeves have these I-cord edges, and all around the neckline also has this like beautiful elegant I-cord edge, which gives it a nice finish. And then the I-cord's also extended into just plain old I-cord to give a little bow detail at the bottom of the V. And it's quite a wide top, which means it's like quite drapey and voluminous, so it's quite cool to wear in summer. And I said I had yarn for this, but the yarn I used for this is a yarn called Cardigan, which is a wool, linen and silk blend in DK weight, and this shade is called Tegelstein, and they didn't make this color anymore, and I ran out during this make, so I had to go on Ravelry. I love Ravelry. And I found someone else who had made something in this, and then I just wrote to her and I was like, do you have any left? I need like, you know, a third of a ball. And thank goodness she did, and she sent it to me, and that was a really lovely thing to finish. So I've worn this quite a lot. It's really nice for sort of transitional periods like spring and autumn, because it is a bit hot. Like, it's good for Norwegian summer, but I went to holiday in like the Mediterranean last year, and this would have been far too hot for that. So I think when it gets to above 22, 23 degrees, this is going to be a bit warm. But for anything that's like, you know, 12 to 20 is really nice, because it kind of is really warm, but also it's got a bit of breeze through it. So I love this design. And then the final design that I'm going to show you is this beautiful thing that I made last summer. This was also a test. This is the Nordlig cardigan by Fiber Tales. So she sort of hinted at this because I think she sort of started experimenting with it well over a year ago in her vlog on YouTube. And I saw her and I could kind of see the process she was going through with making it and the design. And I was really fascinated by the construction, and I think she had to rip back and retry a few times with certain elements. And when the test call came, I was like, yes, get me on that test. And I got on. She puts all her test calls out on Instagram, so if you're interested in testing for her, I think the best way is to, you know, have notifications on for when she posts, and then you'll be first in line for when she needs test knitters, because they fill up very quickly. So anyway, this yarn, she made hers in her family yarn, which was really nice, in this beautiful grey. I made mine in Fjellholt Ullspinneri Pelsgarn. I think it's Pelsull, which is this really nice sheep's wool, and this shade is called Æblegrønn, which means apple green. And yeah, it's this really fun knit because it's brioche, but the fun part of this knit is honestly the construction, because you start at the cuffs of each sleeve, and then you work all the way up to the collar, and then you work to sort of halfway in the back, and then you can see where the sleeve lines come across. And then what you do is you graft it together at the back, and then you pick up all the way along the front and all the way along the back, and then you work brioche down, and then you do rib at the end, and then you also do a button band all the way around. So it was quite a process, but I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing. It was honestly just so engaging, and I love seeing the brioche increases in the sleeves, and it's really a lovely fit. So I wear this so much. I've just been at work all day and I've worn this, and I found these beautiful wooden buttons to go with. So yeah, no, I'm so excited with this cardigan, so I can't rave about it enough. So yeah, if you want someone to try a designer who has a lot of thought and care, but also very like creative approach to design, I would definitely recommend Fibertails. A few other patterns of hers that I've often thought about making but I haven't cast on yet. One is the Alv shawl, which features in 52 Weeks of Shawls by Lina Publishing. And that one is a colourwork shawl, but what's fun about it is it's steeked. So it's, you just go round and round and round in stockinette with colourwork, and then at the end you cut it and you get this beautiful winged shawl. So that's something I've never tried, and I think that sounds like a fun approach to a shawl. She also has she has a lot of beautiful shawl patterns, including the woodlark shawl, which is another colourwork shawl of hers. And then last year she released a shawl called the Skovbund shawl, which means forest floor, and a bit like the Humlebi shawl, it's got like a beautiful edge. I think it's like double rib or like 2x2 rib, and then it has these little like trailing like leaves, and I think it's acorn like patterns, which are really sweet along the side. And then instead of being garter stitch and pellet short, it's just stockinette in the middle. So that one's super beautiful. And in terms of more garments side of things, she has a lot of popular winter accessories like the Gros hat, and she has a lot of she has some headbands that are quite popular and some mittens. In terms of sweaters, she has some really beautiful like textured sweaters. One that I've had my eye on making is the Favo sweater. And that one's really nice because a lot of it is made in honeycomb brioche, which I think is a really fun pattern. If you don't know what honeycomb brioche is, if you're familiar with the petite knit, I think they're called like Honey Clutch, and that series, the Honey series, that's all in honeycomb brioche. So it's kind of like a bit 3D and it looks a little bit like hexagons. So in the Favo sweater, she has a lot of honeycomb brioche, and then she has these really nice, just interesting techniques that like I've learned from reading this pattern, but I haven't made it, where she has these cables which are made by ripping back a series of stitches and then using a crochet hook and then like gathering like a set of some sort of drop stitches together and then crocheting them, like chain stitching up. And what that does is it means the sweater hemline is kind of wavy because it's tighter where these crochet lines are, and I think they look really lovely and intricate, and there's some nice cables on there as well. So I think, yeah, that's a very beautiful detailed top sweater. So, and she has a very nice summer top called the Cloudberry Tee, which is a t-shirt with just a little bit of colour work on the sleeves, which is very cute. And the final pattern that I'm going to mention that really stands out as a fun pattern is the Bregne sweater. Bregne means fern in Danish and Norwegian, and this is a really fun make because I really like herringbone stitch, but not a lot of patterns use it because it's not always easy to do in the round. So what this sweater has, it has sort of herringbone worked flat for like the top of the sweater on the front and the back, and then the rest of the sweater isn't in herringbone. I think it's just in stockinette. So it's, yeah, just got like different textures and structures. So I think that's a really beautiful top as well. I know Nicole from The Gentle Knitter made it, and I think that's one of the first places I saw it. So yeah, that is a little deep dive into Fibre Tales. Go have a look at her YouTube and her Instagram. She's really like calm, charming person to watch if you like calm, charming content. So yeah, I hope that was an interesting video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.